If you pay attention to market news, you might have picked up on experts predicting that the US stock market is way overdue for a colossal crash and that a true recession is headed right our way. And sure, news media and content creators have been repeating these recession warnings for like the past 2 years now, so it almost feels like we've been able to just keep hitting the snooze button on this so-called recession. You might even be thinking, I guess it means we're all safe. Well, you'd be wrong. See, the signals for a recession have become stronger than ever. The Federal Reserve's own indicator has us at about a 60% chance of a recession by 2025, which is the highest percent chance predicted by that model since 1980. Despite more than doubling the interest rates over the past 2 years to fight off inflation, it's barely worked. I mean, prices on everything from gas to fast food are completely insane, and recent economic reports are showing that growth, GDP, is slowing to a crawl. So I have to ask you, are you ready? If the economy came crashing down tomorrow, would you be prepared for that? If the answer to that is no, don't worry. I'm going to give you 4 steps that you can take now to not just survive the next recession, but to end up a winner by the end of it. Now, as a first step, let's learn from history. We're going to jump in my time machine and head back to fall of 2008 and see how the US looked right before everything started to fall apart.
All to the upside. Look how strong.
Trading did not disappoint. 400 points higher. Yes, indeed. The market's more higher last 30 minutes of trading.
Now, in the summer months leading into September, news was reporting that the markets were roaring, that big tech companies were way up, and despite a little bit of turbulence earlier in the year, it looked like the Fed might have everything under control. I mean, the S&P was strong and resilient. You had headline after headline telling people that the market was bullish, the average American was in good shape, and there was overall little cause for concern. Now that all just seems a little bit familiar, doesn't it?
They lie, they're liars.
Then within just 2 to 3 months, everything started to completely unravel. By December, the S&P had already crashed by 30%. News reporters were completely panicking and an official recession was declared on national TV.
The market is not functioning properly. There has been a widespread loss of confidence, and major sectors of America's financial system are at risk of shutting down.
So what were some of the key recession indicators from '08 that we should be looking out for today? Well, first, housing prices in '08 were highly inflated due to rampant speculative buying, and rent was completely out of control, especially in cities and urban areas. Housing became impossible to afford, and the moment prices started to dip, things got way worse way faster. Second, household debt levels were at all-time highs. People taking on record levels of credit debt, auto loan debt, and mortgage debt. That left everybody stretched way too thin on their monthly payments with no wiggle room in their budgets. And lastly, the stock market just didn't make sense anymore. It was continuing to trend higher and higher despite reports of layoffs and people just outright lacking confidence in the economy. Now, I don't need to tell you, the parallels are clear between then and now. While we don't have the same shady mortgage lending practices that played a role in starting that 2008 crash, our housing market is completely unaffordable, the average American is buried in debt, and our stock market by most metrics is overvalued and does not reflect reality. Understand this. The groups that suffered the most in the recession were mostly young adults, lower and middle income earners who were just entering their careers. Studies since 2008 have proven that young adults who join the workforce during a recession have suffered higher mortality due to heart and liver disease. They have lower total lifetime incomes. They have higher rates of disability, and they're less likely to be married successfully or to have any kids. These effects impacted that group for the rest of their lives, really. That was the first group of workers who got laid off or fired, and they lost their primary incomes. As a group, they had the least cash savings to fall back on, and they were the ones who couldn't afford the rent or the mortgages anymore. I mean, they lost their prime earning years being stuck working crap jobs while their homes got foreclosed and their cars got repoed. So if you don't want to be like them, we need to start financial preparations now. The second step to prepare for the recession is to have laser focus on deleveraging and eliminating high interest debt. The latest report from the Federal Reserve shows that as of the first quarter of 2024, total household debt is at an all-time high at nearly $18 trillion. The average household has over $147,489 in debt. As you can see, being financially average, it actually just sucks. I mean, most people are up to their eyeballs in monthly debt payments and minimums.
Debt. Depression.
And during a recession, do you know what happens? Most lenders, most credit card companies jack up their interest rates and start charging you more on the debt you already have. In addition to that, lenders become way more cautious about loaning new money. In 2008, for example, it was much harder to qualify for a new credit card, and even if you could, the limits on those cards are significantly lower than you might be used to. So if you're one of the 59% of people who depend on credit cards to cover your essential expenses, you are definitely not going to be able to find new cards for balance transfers or to help you make rent payments in an emergency. The only way to avoid that situation is to take steps now to completely eliminate your high interest debt before the recession comes. The simple approach I like to take for this is to list my debts out, ordered from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate, and aggressively pay down the highest rate debt until it's gone and then move on to the next one. There's unfortunately no shortcuts here. Getting out of debt is going to suck. It's a painful process. You will have to cut back on your expenses.
You know how rich people get rich? They save money. Wow!
If you do want a free and simple budgeting template that I made that you can copy to help you track your dollars, I added it into the description below. Now, if you're a minority of Americans that enter the recession without any consumer debt, you are so much better prepared to survive that storm. You might even be able to profit from a recession if you have enough extra cash flow to keep investing once the markets have crashed. The third step we're going to take to prepare for the recession is to upskill or reskill for better job security and to diversify our income streams. Now, if you're someone who's worked in the same industry or at the same job for the past several years, you probably haven't had to seriously worry about acquiring new skills because the market hasn't really had that major pullback other than the temporary situation that we saw with the pandemic. Now, in my world, in finance and tech, we have started to see major layoffs at both the banks and at the big tech companies, but it's still nothing compared to what we would see if a real recession were to hit this year or next year. So regardless of whether you're a cashier at a grocery store or a banker at Goldman Sachs, you should be getting ahead of the curve with new job skills as soon as you can. So what kind of skills should you be looking at to be recession-proof? One article gives the following take. If we look at technology acceleration, there's going to be 1 million new jobs by 2027 for AI and machine learning specialists. We just don't have the people with skills to fill those roles. Now, you should see this as a major opportunity. You don't have to be Bill Gates or even understand programming to know how to use AI effectively. You just need to open ChatGPT and get familiar with the tool. Now, I recommend taking a free online course that'll give you a certification in AI prompt writing and start there. Because at this point, that one certification could well be enough to set your resume and interviews apart and land you that first job that puts you on an AI-based career path. Here's some other industries you might want to also consider. First, cybersecurity, and this is what I'd call the most stable career path in tech today. If I could personally go back in time to when I was a cashier, this is a specific industry that I would be training to work in. The median cybersecurity specialist gets paid $130,000 a year, and that's early in your career. Just a fantastic space to start getting into. Next, healthcare. Pharmacy techs, x-ray specialists, lab techs, these are all jobs that are going to continue to be in high demand. You only need a high school diploma or course credential for them, so anyone can pivot from what you're doing into this space. And third, of course, we have the trades and skilled labor. Now, a good friend of mine was an HVAC tech during the last recession, and he is now a multimillionaire with the properties he bought from his income during that time. Remember, HVAC, electricians, plumbers, they're just always in demand no matter what's going on with the S&P 500.
You're going to need a plumber.
Now, in addition to reskilling, you should consider alternate streams of income. If you have some specific skills or hobbies, like maybe you're a graphic designer or a musician, consider freelancing. There's tons of websites like Fiverr and Upwork where you could take on small projects and start getting paid. You'd be shocked how many people start something like this just on the weekends, and quickly they get enough business and clients to be able to totally quit their day job. Plus, it's just way more rewarding to work for yourself. And even if you just get a few extra $100 a month in income, believe me, it will make such a huge difference in your financial health during the recession. Finally, our last step of preparation is going to be to focus on cash management. If you look at all the super wealthy people in the world, there's one thing that they're all doing. They're stockpiling cash. Mr. Warren Buffett, for example, has $168 billion in cash set aside right now, $60 billion of which he accumulated in just the last year. Why? Well, Steve Hank, professor of economics at Johns Hopkins, gives us a simple answer. Quote, the cash word tells us one big thing. Buffett does not think there's much out there that's worth buying, and that in these circumstances, cash is king. Now, before we go crazy stockpiling cash to buy the big dips in the market when they come, let's first start by having an emergency savings. Now, if you don't already have one, you need to open up a high-yield savings account and start building up your savings fund. Now, if you're young and you don't have any kids or dependents, I think having 2 to 3 months of expenses saved up in cash is probably enough. If you're older or if you have a family, you're going to need more. You probably want to consider 3 to 6 months worth of expenses set aside. Look, the moment a real recession hits, the people with no cash savings, they're the ones who lose everything first. It only takes one layoff, one missed mortgage payment, and your entire house of cards can collapse in on you. I promise you, de-risking your life by having a few months of expenses of cash set aside and saved is worth so much more than the returns that money would have given you if you bought stocks. Remember, the 2008 collapse happened over the course of 2 to 3 months in the wintertime. So it can come fast and violent when the job market is not prepared for it. Plus, high-yield savings accounts are currently paying anywhere from 5 to 5.5% interest just for holding your cash. That's really not too far from the average rate of return of the stock market with none of the downside risk of overinflated stocks.
Okay, that should be a no-brainer.
So you're getting an excellent risk-free return on your cash by doing this. Now, if you already have your emergency savings fund, you also want to be setting aside cash to invest with. During a recession, the market can tank by 30, 40, even 50% easily. In other words, everything's on sale. If you have the cash on hand to buy the biggest dips without interfering with your ability to pay your bills, you can easily double or triple your money by the end of the recession.
A lot of money.
Do not underestimate the power of having an uninvested cash position ready to deploy. The losers in the recession are the people who are forced to sell their investments, sell their retirement accounts at this major loss just to pay down debt or to avoid eviction and foreclosure. If you want to be a winner, you can't just be safe. You need to be in a position to buy. But don't just listen to me. Baron Rothschild is credited with this legendary quote. The time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own. Now, ultimately, as recession indicators continue to get stronger and stronger, you need to set some clear goals in the short term if you want to be ready by the time it comes. Now is the time to cut back on expenses and create a budget. Eliminate your high interest debt, build a sufficient cash savings, acquire new hireable skills, and make yourself indispensable to your current employer. And of course, if things do start coming down, do not panic and definitely do not sell your investments. You will be okay as long as you have the income and savings to afford your bills. But if you want to be more than okay, if you want to be excellent and win, start setting aside the cash you need to be able to buy into that big market dip whenever it does come. With that, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know down below, what stocks would you be buying if the market were to crash by 40 or 50% next month? And until next time,